All right, back for another beer review, and today is another installment of Western New York Wednesday here on the channel, and the beer I'm reviewing today comes from the 12 Gates Brewing Company in conjunction with the Buffalo Brewpub, both of which out of Williamsville, New York, and this is their Buffalo Breakfast Stout. So this is an American Stout that is brewed with maple syrup, chocolate bark, cold pressed coffee, and bourbon. Comes in at 7% alcohol by volume, 32 IBUs, and at the time of review, this can is approximately 7 weeks old. So I have not reviewed like a standalone beer from 12 Gates on the channel. I reviewed their Session IPA, which was a collaboration between like almost every single Western New York brewery. But I've heard good things about this one dating back to last year, and then they decided to can it this year. And it is a collaboration with the Buffalo Brewpub, which I have never been to. I should probably go to the Buffalo Brewpub at some point. But anyway, on the back here it says, this annual collaboration between Buffalo Brewpub and 12 Gates Brewing brings back all things Western New York. With maple syrup from East Aurora, chocolate bark from Antoinette Confections in Depew, cold pressed coffee from Kornerstone Roasters in Kenmore, and bourbon from 5 and 20 in Westfield, we pack as much Western New York as we can into the Sweet Stout. Keep cold, drink fresh, do not age. Pretty much have done all that correctly. So the only thing I have an issue with, or I guess not really an issue, but a question about, is whether or not they're aging this in bourbon barrels, or if they are using like bourbon soaked or bourbon infused oak staves / chips. I'd imagine probably the latter, probably not in bourbon barrels. They would probably mention it. So anyway, let's get this into a glass. A lot of moving parts in this one. I don't know what to really expect. I'm hoping that it's quite tasty, but when you have maple syrup and cold pressed coffee and chocolate bark and bourbon and everything, who knows, right? So, hoping it's quite delicious. So, that pours out a very, very deep brown color. When I was pouring it was very murky looking, but it's not pitch black. It might come off pitch black on camera, but it's definitely a deep, murky brown color, about a finger of a tan head. Big bubbles mixed in with little bubbles. Looks quite creamy. It is fizzing away though, so I don't know. We'll see how long that lasts, but looks like a beautiful beer, honestly. Yeah, anyway, let's get a nose on it. Wow, lots of roasty, toasty tones in conjunction with a very nicely roasted coffee. But you can kind of tell they're using cold press. It doesn't have like the acidity you get from a normal coffee in the nose. Hopefully it doesn't translate into the taste, or hopefully that translates into the taste as well. Definitely a nice confectionery chocolate sweetness, like a straight-on milk chocolate. Not really picking up on the bourbon or the maple in the nose. Now, this has been on my fridge probably close to 45 minutes, so it's probably in like the 55, 60 degree range. There is an overabundance of sweetness. Maybe the maple syrup is just bringing a generic sweetness in conjunction with the chocolate bark and just the malt component in general. But I'd be lying if I said that I could smell bourbon or maple syrup specifically. It just smells like a really nicely done, like normal breakfast stout, like your Founder's breakfast stouts, where you're just getting chocolate and coffee. That's pretty much what I'm getting from this one. So it's not bad in the least. It actually smells quite tasty. Let's get into it. Cheers. That's quite nice. First things, at 7%, it is a bit thin. Eric Gilbert settled down. Paul, yes. Chris, you also settled down. Everybody settled down. Well, those three specifically. It is a bit thin at 7%. This is like lighter side of medium body. It has a thinness that I didn't anticipate. Like smelling it, I thought it'd be more robust and the mouthfeel would be a bit heavier. Not the case. It also, despite pouring out, it doesn't have a ton of carbonation. This is mild carbonation in this one. I wouldn't say it's like super undercarb, but it definitely doesn't have a ton of carbonation to it. The mouthfeel is slightly smooth and creamy. I don't know if they're using like flaked oats in this one or just oats in general. I wish they would have, if not, because I think it would have enhanced the body to this one and also the mouthfeel. That said, There's a really nice cold pressed coffee component to this one. It's the predominant note. It's very big, but it just has a really nice roasty coffee character. Like I said, it's not acidic. It's not bitter in the least. It just has a really nice cold pressed coffee quality to the taste. And like I said, that kind of carried over from the aroma, which I was expecting, and I'm glad it did. There is an overall confectionery sweetness to this one, that chocolate bark mixing in with that maple syrup. I am getting a big chocolate component in the taste, but it's not as sweet as it was or smelled in the aroma. And I wouldn't be able to tell you what exactly, as far as chocolate is concerned, what they're using. But I would guess a sweeter chocolate. Again, much like the nose, maple syrup. I mean, they say they're using it, and I believe them. And it's probably, I'd say it's definitely in here. But it's just adding a generic sweetness to the overall character of the beer. I can't tell you there's maple syrup in this one. And bourbon, I'd imagine they're using probably bourbon-soaked or bourbon-infused oak staves or chips. And I'm really getting no bourbon from this one. Maybe slight vanilla tinges on the outside, but that could be mistaken for the malt or one of the other adjuncts producing that. For me, couldn't tell you there's bourbon in here at all. It's not a bad beer in the least. I'm actually enjoying it. The finish is on the sweeter side, doesn't really have any kind of dryness to it. I wish there was a little bit more bitterness and a little bit more balance. I do feel like when this can is done, I'm kind of done with this beer in general. If you don't have a sweet tooth, you're probably not going to drink this one and be too happy with it. But if you do enjoy sweeter beers, I think you'd be happy with this one. Chris over at Off the 10th now, if you do see this one, I'd say give it a go. I don't know if you'd necessarily like this, but it is on the sweeter side, so I do think you'd enjoy it. For me personally, I'm going to give Buffalo Breakfast Stout, collaboration between 12 Gates Brewing Company and Buffalo Brewpub. I'm going to give this a solid 3.75 out of 5. I think the flavors are more in like the 4 range, maybe even higher. With the lack of carbonation in conjunction with the fact that I'm not really picking up on the maple syrup or the bourbon, and it's a bit too sweet overall, knocks it down a bit. I do enjoy this one. If they do release it next year, my constructive criticism, because I'm a beer tuber, I fucking know what I'm talking about. I really don't. I have no idea what I'm talking about. If they're not using any kind of oats or flaked oats in this one, I would love to see the addition of that. And the carb, I don't know what's up with my can specifically, but it definitely has lower carbonation. I think if the carbonation was bumped up a little bit and the mouthfeel was a bit better, it'd get a higher score and I would enjoy it more, as is 3.75 out of 5. Not a bad beer, but one that I'm probably not going to seek out again unless they tweak the recipe for me personally. But if, like I said, if you do see this, you like sweeter stouts, give it a go. Anyway, appreciate you guys stopping by for another Western New York Wednesday. Be on the lookout next week for another installment. Until then, cheers.